Unleaded Toast presents An Elegy in Crimson, Episode 8, Philip Moulin. If you like what you hear, consider liking and subscribing or leave a comment for us. It means a lot, and your feedback is very important to us. Thanks. Before we begin, a kindness of sorts. This unholy elegy touches dark things. Violence, betrayal, power twisted until it screams, coercion, obsession, regret. The decay of love, yes, but also the predatory ecstasy of domination. The vampires you'll meet, although they're not brooding romantics, they're apex predators dressed in silk and shadow. And the mortals? Oh, they're sheep, fleeting, often forgotten, unless they amuse. They will kill you. They will seduce you. They will destroy what they love the most. Violence here is not without prejudice. Oh, and it is very rarely gentle. Some episodes will hurt. Some may unearth your own forgotten wounds. Oh, you have permission to pause, to breathe, to walk away. But if you stay knowing the void watches back. Oh, my beloved audience, you've tasted the first breath, haven't you? Sweet, fragile Philip, the healer, the scholar, the servant of the saints. And Master William filled his head with languages and science and history, and then carried him to Tripoli, Lebanon, not Syria, to tend the crusaders and watch what war leaves in its wake. He scoured the ruins like a crow picking at bones, found lost Aristotle whispering secrets, not just of bodies, but of power. But faith, faith began to rot in his hand. The Pope's court showed him gold-plated shadows, prayers without belief, and then a beautiful slim woman in the desert. A mirage of freedom and flesh. Not a woman at all, but a djinn clothed in desire. For 3 nights she drank him dry, both of breath, of life, and of mortality. He returned from the sands changed, unbreathing, unforgiven, and yet still man enough to crave, to need. Oh, he murdered poor Samantha because she would not seduce him. He burned under the words of the Quran and fled another creature just like himself. He killed Mary for a betrayal that may have only been in his mind. This is no longer the soft pink dawn of episode 1. No, this is the cold exhalation of episode 2. Listen, darlings, as the physician becomes the predator. Watch as breath becomes hunger and hunger becomes ritual.
Prosaic of names, asked me what should have been a simple thing, really. Asked me to take care of someone for her, someone who had wronged her. An Arab man, a Muslim. There were some in England those days, though not nearly as many. They were no longer to be arrested or slain on sight. That time had passed, but knew that I was physically competent, shall we say, and said that he had wronged her and needed to be punished. And, well, that was something I could accomplish. And indeed, when I tracked him down in the rooms he was renting, it was so easy. Pin him down, beat him, tell him it was in her name, of course. And then just as I approached to finish things, he began praying with the words of the prophet, and again I was pushed back as though by a gale wind.
That must have been disconcerting.
The bastard grinned at me, and I had no choice but to leave. I would not be surprised if he could have killed me, had he tried. So I fled.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Not as sorry as I was, nor Mary for that matter.
Tell me what happened.
Oh, I took it out on her.
Oh.
I assumed, as madmen might, that she had deliberately sent me into a trap. You must understand, I had been living for hundreds of years at this point, living, if you call it that. And I could count on the fingers of one hand the things that had actually threatened me, so for her to put me in the presence of another was too much of a coincidence for me. So I did to her what I could not do to him.
Well, now, that's the monster we all know and love. And that experience, yes, that led you someplace. Secret societies, ritual masks, whispered names. What charming little cult swept you into its fold, and why of all cursed things did they want you? And what grotesque ambition binds you to that group?
I was still a student of the arcane, the occult. And when one travels in small circles such as that, one finds like-minded souls. And when I saw the same familiar faces day after day in the used bookshops and the ancient libraries, we struck up conversations. It became apparent that they had a small group of those with similar interests. They called themselves the Circle of Osiris, as though they had the slightest idea. And when it became clear that I knew what I was talking about, that I read Arabic, Greek, Latin, Hebrew, I think that's where it began. They just thought that I was a useful adjunct to their group. But inevitably, I began to rise in authority within the group. And I began to shape their goals. I began to have them seek out any rumors of things similar to what I had become, to see what powers they had, what weaknesses, for I did not know still nearly enough of what I was.
Tell me, love, how long did you lead the group?
40 years.
40 years?
Yes. Eventually, even the most foolish of them realized that I was far younger than I should be. I decided that perhaps I should go on vacation to the countryside and die of old age and return as a child or a cousin, but it seemed like so much work.
But tell me, precious, what forgotten scrap of your past did they exhume? Like a corpse from its tomb, and they rallied their friends against you. And when the knives turned, how did you squirm? Tell me, they turned on you before you could really get away.
I had grown too complacent in my control over them, my influence.
Oh, it happens to the best of us.
And when I gave them too much information on what manner of monsters they were seeking, one of the brighter among them put two and two together, as they say. And to his credit, he did not confront me, he did not ask, he merely gathered those among his friends who he could trust and decided that they would put an end to me. It was very clever, actually.
And it almost worked.
It did, but I had not told them everything of what I could do. I had learned more than a few tricks in those ancient texts. And so I was able to trap them in their own headquarters. I haven't checked. I wonder if that's ever been excavated.
I don't know. That would be interesting. Could you imagine the archaeologist who found them?
Well,
that could create some really good stories. But after that close call, you thought it time to take a slumber, didn't you? Or was it a walking death? I don't know. But the century slipped away and you just went through the motions. They just slipped away like ash through your fingers.
I was very weary after the fight. Yes, I decided it was time to rest.
So you woke up in, what was it, the 17th century, 18th century? Something like that.
Yes, the mid-18th.
Mm-hmm. And something you noticed is progress marches on. The world burns in its old ways, doesn't it, my little relic? How did you benefit from this tide, from this change, from this churn? What cunning little advantage did it give you?
The world is always burning to those whose vision is long enough. It simply burns very slowly sometimes. But no, in that time, yes, the fire burned hot and fast indeed. I went to Paris during the Troubles, as they called them, while all of the rich and noble were being pulled from their houses and murdered in the squares. And while, to be honest, my sympathies lay with the common man, they didn't have the money. So I was able to assist a number of those nobles in getting out of the city and then the country before it was too late. I earned a pretty penny doing it, I don't mind saying, and then I could take ship to the colonies and set myself up as a king.
You didn't do that, did you?
Well, no, the king would be rather obvious. They already had one at the time, but I did well for myself for a time.
But when you got there, your methods for acquiring your meals didn't work any longer, did it? Did the lambs grow smarter? Did the shepherds catch on?
I'm not sure how familiar you are with the early inhabitants of the American colonies, but they were religious fanatics of a like I have nothing to compare them to. They were always paranoid about the devil's workings, and if anyone grew ill, grew sick, grew tired when they should not, then the accusations of sorcery and devilry and witchcraft began to fly. It was very difficult.
You had two acquaintances at the time. Seems like there was a little drama between the livestock. These two little mortals are at odds. And you, always the opportunist, you set yourself into the mess, didn't you? What was the feud about? How did it turn out for you?
Well, as I said, they were always looking for the devil's workings, but that did not make them any wiser or better or holier than any other mortal. 2 young men just starting their families. I forget one of their names, but the other one I will never forget was named Justice Saith the Lord. That was the kind of names they had. And Justice had a lovely young wife, but that's not what he wanted. He wanted the other one's lovely young wife. And of course, that was not done in those days. So all he could do was sit in his house and seethe. And I could see the fury growing in him, and, well, it doesn't take much to provoke someone who's in such a state. And one day in the square, he said something like, "I will see you dead, whatever your name is." And of course, there were plenty of witnesses, so a few days later, when whatever his name was did wind up dead, all the air sucked from his lungs and a gaze of terror on his face, well, they didn't need to look very far to see who the culprit was, now did they?
No, I bet they thought he was the devil, didn't they? I mean, who else could suck the air right out of your lungs?
Well, I say that as though it was obvious, but I'm sure they thought he was in league with the devil at the very least. He named at least half a dozen others before he died, because that's how it was done.
Oh, how did you stay out of that?
I simply kept my head low and tutted and shook my head and prayed along with them as they hoped that the devil would go away. None of them looked at me twice.
You went through a period that is not really like you, my darling. Oh, I can tell it is not a part of your makeup. But you went into a bit of reflection, didn't you? You started looking at yourself. You started looking at your stained life. You started reading poetry? Seriously.
Spoken like a man with no soul.
Yeah, you're actually right. But anyway, what part of your monstrous self were you truly trying to immortalize in your works of, I think you call it art? In such a savage place, I can't imagine.
The one advantage of being something such as I is that it gives one a uniquely long perspective on humanity, and how over the centuries and through all the countries and across the oceans, the fundamental nature of man never changes. And that is what I was trying in my humble way to convey. That we are all simply animals grubbing in the dirt, looking to feed and fight and fuck until our time runs out. And that we always will be.
Where did your art take you?
This is going to sound like one of those ridiculous brags, but I talked to Ben Franklin at one point. He didn't think my work was appropriate for his readers.
Oh, probably not.
But, so I simply stayed in my manor and wrote in my books, and thought that one day, perhaps like any number of tortured artists across the centuries, I'm sure, thought that someday the world might be ready to see my soul bared in such a way.
But you started noticing something about that time. Years are starting to catch up, I believe. Your fury starts to boil like you're a spoiled little child, like you're one of the sheep, come on. But you dive headlong into the fury and the chaos. And when the smoke clears, what ruin have you left in your wake? What mark did it leave on you?
Well, as I've said so many times, I became complacent. In time, there were more secular individuals in town. The Protestants had arrived, you see. And some of them at least were more concerned with improving their wealth and their status in the world than with the ways of God. And so eventually I became part of those circles because I was a prestigious man with a significant fortune and no wife, which attracted the attention of many of them. And I held a party. I thought it'd be a good way to continue to win them over, make my way into their confidences, find where and who I could best strike. But as I sat there, watching them dance and eat and drink and bicker and snipe at one another behind their backs, well, you said it yourself, I found the rage boiling in me. It was just what I had been writing about, the same miserable, petty vengeance I'd been seeing for centuries. And I'd had enough. I locked the doors and grabbed some burning logs from the fireplace and began to set about showing them what I thought of them all.
That's a bit dramatic, isn't it, darling?
I was a poet at the time.
Okay.
But yes, I was, if nothing else, effective. None of them made it out alive. The house burned down, of course, along with all of my books and most of my wealth. It left me with scars on my arms that I still bear. I don't heal the same way anymore, you see. And so, once again, I had to flee a town with nothing but what I could carry on my back.
But another creature of the long night, or whatever, took notice, didn't they? Tell me, who is this rival, this equal, this other? What did they see in you that made you worth challenging? And when your clash ended, what remained? Their wrath. And you failed. What failure marks you even now?
I don't know what it was to this day, or what it was called. I think it was one of those spirits that had lived in this land before the white man came. But when it found me wandering in the dark, smelling of smoke and despair, it was like any other devil. It came to put its arm around my shoulder and promise me that it could make everything better. I think perhaps it wanted my soul, foolishly thinking that I still had one. But I was not in a mood for such games. We fought, we brawled in the street like drunken schoolboys. I was tired, yes, but I was full of anger, full of breath, full of energy. I gave it a good run. But in the end, we were on its land and it drew power from that. And I think if I had had a soul, it would have killed me. But it cast cast me out, banished me from anywhere the river touched. And I had no map, so I simply kept fleeing north until I could no longer feel its eyes on me.
And when you got north, you were tired, weren't you? You were so tired. And so, my little pet, curtain closed for a little time there. You slept, not from fatigue, but more from the crushing weight of time than anything else.
That too is fatigue. Of a different sort, I grant you.
Where did you sleep? How were you not discovered?
It's rather pathetic, really. I was in a cave.
Oh.
Cave in the mountains, narrow and steep and wet. Not even pretty to look at. When tourists eventually discovered it, it wasn't even enough to be made a state park. But I found a dry spot and cleared off enough of the bat shit to curl up and sleep for a while.
So, you were sleeping, but the past never stays dead for long, darling. They came to you, didn't they? In your slumber, their voice like wind over bones. Was it forgiveness they offered? Or damnation whispered like a kiss? Oh, and when you awoke, what mark had the ghost left upon your skin?
It's stupid now that I look back on it, but in all the time since Zayla had turned me, saying all the time that she wanted to be with child, it had never occurred to me that she might have been. I had no idea how many children or any number of other descendants I might have had, and what manner of thing they might be, whether more of me as I had been or her as she was. And that was how the dreams went. You speak of it only like it's one, but it was a series. Each one another child or something claimed to be my child. Each one more monstrous and less human than the last. I don't think they wanted anything from me. I think they wanted me to see what I had made in those moments of unwitting passion. Shouldn't even call it passion, lust. And then, when the last of them had gone, a thing that barely looked like an animal, it was, I don't have words for it, but when it had passed, I found her mark on my neck, just as it had been after we first coupled all those centuries ago. I had no doubt at that point that she was still alive, wanted me to know that I was still hers.
How did that make you feel?
You know, my instinctive reaction was to be terrified. I knew that as much as I had learned in the centuries that passed, she had had infinitely more beforehand to learn and grow strong. But I wasn't afraid. I had given her what she wanted, and I think it was that I wanted to see her again. I wanted to talk to her after lifetimes of experience and learn what she had learned, how she hoped if she did. Or perhaps she was mad and I knew what would await me.
What were you left with? What feeling?
Loneliness. For the first time in as long as I could remember, the company of mortals no longer held any real appeal. They could not understand what I was.
That's gotta be so hard for an abomination like you. The facilitator walks up and rubs a lacquered fingernail across your cheek. I'm so sorry. Turns to the crowd and smiles. But now, things take a little bit of a twist. One of the sheep, they become your servant? Another moth to your flame? Tell me, who is this fool that offered their loyalty, their soul, to someone like you? And what did they do for you? What did they think they were going to get out of this?
His name was Paul. He was a miner with an E, not an O. One who was digging in the mountains looking to find, I don't know, gold or coal or steel or diamonds or iron or diamonds or something. And instead he found me. I'm sure he thought I was dead, some decrepit old corpse that had fallen in here years ago. But when he touched me, I'm sure he was going through my pockets for loose change. I woke and I stretched and I looked at him. And don't mistake me, I was hungry. I could have drained him of breath without a thought. But he did something that I had never had a victim do before. He apologized and offered to do whatever he could to make up for disturbing me. He knew that no mortal could have been in that cave, as far away from sunlight, and as old as clothes as I was wearing. I don't think he knew what I was, and I honestly don't think he had the imagination or creativity to find out. But he knew I was more than he was. And so, we had an arrangement. I tested him first. I asked him to bring me back some suitable clothes, or I could see by the way he was dressed that what I was wearing was no longer acceptable, and to say not a word of what he had found to anyone else. And he came back with the clothes. And when we went out of the cave, there was no crowd of monster hunters waiting to take me down or preachers ready to burn me at the stake. So, for some extent, I could trust him. He helped me establish myself as a stranger from out of town. Helped me understand what had changed while I was asleep. And in return, I was able to keep him in the comfortable fashion he wished to become accustomed to.
Where did you go? What area were you living in at that time? Or after your big sleep, did you take off and go somewhere else? As I said, I wanted to find Zayla, but I had no idea if she was still where I had left her. So I traveled west, went to Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh.
Yes. It was a miserable town at the time.
You do know that if the Earth ever needed an enema, that's where it would be inserted.
I had assumed that would be Ohio, but...
Oh, Ohio, Indiana, Pittsburgh, whatever.
You may be more current than I am. Regardless, it was a place I could begin again.
So describe your your living conditions. I mean, do you have enough wealth? You now have a manservant.
Yes, after my revelation at the party, I no longer wanted a manor, so I simply had a quiet home on the street outside the main part of town. I put about that I was a retired doctor and was indeed able to help the occasional sick child or ailing aunt. There had been so many advances in medicine, I learned so much. But most of the time, I was, you might say, retired. I dabbled in my garden, I wrote some more poetry, which I'm sure you would despise. And I was, well, not happy, but perhaps content for the first time in a long time.
It's such a sweet story. It's too bad it has to change. Someone you trusted, darling. You trusted them. And I know you hate that word, but they betrayed you. How delightfully unexpected. What did they do? And why, of all things, did you forgive them? That's not like you.
I think, on some level, as laughable as it sounds to me now, I was trying to become a better person. I think I was beginning to feel some modicum of regret for all that I had been and done. And Paul, bless his idiotic little heart, had apparently come to the conclusion that I was a vampire, which, frankly, is closer than I might have given him credit for, but it did not do him much good. When he crept into my room at noon, wearing a garland of garlic bulbs around his neck, carrying half a dozen crucifixes and a hawthorn wood stake, I think perhaps he expected to find me sleeping in a bed, if not in a coffin. But instead, I just looked over at him from my desk, and I laughed longer and louder and harder than I had in 500 years.
If he only knew there was a real way to get rid of you.
He did his best to find out.
Why did you forgive him?
He was too pathetic to kill. And honestly, the sheer joy of knowing that that brave idiot had taken his life in his hands to do what he thought was the right thing against the wrong monster. I couldn't do it. Not then.
That is unusual. I did not expect that from you.
Perhaps the poetry had paid off.
Oh, yes. Poetry takes people so many dark and horrible places. The year. It's around 1915, 1914. You know what's going on in the world, right?
It was difficult not to, at least in the West. Men doing what they had always done, just on a far grander scale than they ever had.
Where did you go?
Well, as I said, I was in the process of convincing myself that I could be a good person again. So, I volunteered as a doctor and returned to France for the first time in 800 years and saw firsthand that while war had grown no less idiotic over the years, it had certainly grown bigger. It made me angry.
Did Paul go with you?
No, he didn't understand why I would want to go. But I left him the house. I thought about killing him, but wasn't worth it.
So tell me, you were trying to make up for something. I mean, surely you know that your acts far outweigh any bit of repentance you could ever do.
I was under no illusion that I would be forgiven, if such a thing even exists. But I wanted to make myself feel better about myself, if you like.
Feelings. Okay. How long were you there in the war?
Oh, until the end. Until the armistice was signed. But I was so angry with what they had done to themselves and the land I was born on. I couldn't stay. Even though it felt like home.
You recognized somebody in the trenches. It remembered you.
They certainly did.
Who were they? There was a flicker, wasn't there?
Yes. The one who had driven me out of Europe. The one in whose eyes I first learned to recognize what was reflected in mine. I think if he had ever sought the kind of repentance that I had sought of myself, he had gone past that and far to the other side. He was an officer, and he delighted in sending those young men out to die.
Did you confront him?
No. I have never been, well, I was not at that time a fool. But I did perhaps spread a little word about what he had done, perhaps cause a little dissension among his soldiers. It wouldn't have done any good if they had tried to kill him. He would have finished them all without breaking a sweat, but it made me feel like I was doing something.
It was good for your soul, huh?
I've long since lost that.
Oh yeah, I know. So where did you go after this?
Well, having seen the West, I went east. Through Germany, Poland, into Russia. Strange country, Russia.
What did you find so strange about it?
The only thing they hate more than their leaders is themselves. That's why everyone in Russia is drunk all the time.
That would explain it.
You can read it in the great novels and plays of Russian literature. They hate themselves so much. And they deal with it by hating everyone around them. And drinking a lot of vodka, of course.
Describe your time there, sweetheart.
Well, at first I was a traveler, and then as I learned the language and moved from town to town, I became a traveling healer. I spent some time in the far eastern parts of the country, the cold and the reindeer, but I had no patience for that, so eventually I returned to Kiev, set myself up as a retired doctor. Did my best to blend in and live quietly. No servants this time. I didn't want to make that mistake again.
What was feeding like during that time?
Well, the revolution had passed. Everything was in disarray. And over time, I discovered that I did not need as much breath as I once had. So, it was simple. I found ladies of uncertain virtue, paid them for their time, and took a little more than they had originally wanted to give. I didn't kill anymore, unless it was a dire circumstance. I just left them confused and dizzy as I sent them on their way.
But if you didn't feed all the way, what did that do to you?
I don't know if you've ever been so hungry that you don't realize you're hungry anymore. But it was like that. I had what I thought was enough and didn't think it was necessary to take more. I did not have a great deal of energy. I slept a lot of the time, puttered around my house, but I thought I was fine.
You were older, so...
Yes. Not that anyone could tell.
But then the next great tragedy. Oh, this one is so sweet. Secrets are spilled at last. Someone pieced together who you were through ancient documents and writings and and your poetry. Oh, poor, precious Philip. Ever the scholar, ever the seeker, and yet always the fool. Oh, but you tried, didn't you? Oh, you tried so very hard to shed the skin of the monster, to pass as man, to pretend at mercy. But the monster always fights back. Always. Philip has been brought to unlife by Brian Schoner. Darling, he is a creature of games of every kind you can imagine. Dice that rattle like bones, boards stacked with peril, glowing screens that devour hours, and even riddles of the mind. When he steps away from the table, his bass guitar fills the air with something dark and low. A hypnotist too. Yes, you heard me. Beware. His voice, it coils. He co-hosts the Ascent to Board Games podcast, weaving cardboard dreams and paper empires. And if you crave to pursue him into the ether, seek him on Blue Sky. The links can be found in the description, darlings. Follow him if you're willing to tempt fate. As always, thank you for stepping into the void with us. If this episode took your breath away, leave a review, whisper to a friend, or simply sit in the hush. Oh, but remember, this was Act 2. The breath grows thinner, the faith is unraveling, and Philip will return. Not only learned, but lost. Until then, the book quivers shut, the quill exhales its last, and you, my beloved witnesses, oh, you should pray your lungs are never his to claim.